Hello and welcome to the Voice of the People. I'm your host, Dr. Kenneth Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect you enough to give you the facts. I want to thank you for joining us this morning on WASC 1530 AM. I'm here with the greatest radio man upset, Mr. Ed Waddell. We like to give you information, like to entertain you, like to just get you thinking outside the box. This morning we don't have long, but we want to let you understand there's 3 V's. V as in voting, also V as in violence, and V as in taking the vaccine. I guess we'll talk about the most important one first. They all are equally important, but the vaccine, we're suggesting and we're highly recommending that all folks who have not been vaccinated, that you consider taking the vaccine. Give yourself a chance to live. If you get the Delta variant and you're not vaccinated, there's a good chance you have severe illness and you'll possibly die. They're telling us, the CDC, the World Health Organization, and DHEC, that this virus is terrible, and most of the folks that will have the most negative outcomes are the folks who are not vaccinated. So I'd like to encourage you to get everybody in the household vaccinated. For you folks that have a young person in the house, high school kids, middle school kids, get all your kids vaccinated. We're going back to school in several weeks. Parents, you have to make a decision about what's safe for your children in-person learning. Whether you want your child to wear a mask, whether you want your child to be around other teachers and staff and other students who do not have a mask. All those are the type of questions that we have to address as parents. I'd like to encourage all parents, contact your school board members, your superintendent. Make sure you go to the school board website and attend in person or online. I think it's on YouTube. Make sure that you're a witness to your school board meetings. In District 7, we have one next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock p.m. So I'd like to invite you to engage your mind and your heart as we discuss, potential problems moving forward in the school year. And so be mindful that the vaccine is a good way to choose life over death. So most of the drugstores and your primary care physician and DHEC, a lot of other places, call and make an appointment and get your vaccine. Also, this issue about violence, particularly in the black community and the poor communities, and in communities that's undeveloped with not a lot of job opportunities, not a lot of role models, it's probably not a lot of home ownership. Housing is difficult. Most poor communities have a tendency to be over-policed. In some cases, the more crime you have, the more police presence you have, and you get branded as a criminal. And one of the negative things that happen when you get a lot of police in your neighborhood, officers in general tend to start treating everybody in the community as criminals. And truth be told, even with this incident we've had in the last couple of weeks, 95% or 98% of citizens in Spartanburg and in all communities are law-abiding citizens and do not like violence and do not support violence. And so we have to be careful as we market and as we give advertisement to and as we give attention to the criminals. So the person who takes a gun and shoots somebody else is a criminal. And we expect law enforcement to find them, to get them in jail, to put charges on them, take them to court and put them in jail. And we don't want those individuals walking our streets anymore. I mean, that's the way it works. You commit a crime, you get locked up and they send you away because it makes us feel safe. And oftentimes in communities when we have some shootings, which we've always had violence in our communities, and also there's something a lot of folks don't talk about. Our community has always been the victim of violence, historically, by law enforcement. So we don't want to forget the history that we're talking about, the black community in general, In the United States of America, in the state of South Carolina, we have not had a safe environment. The history of law enforcement and the politics of law enforcement in this state in particular, and most of the slave states, black folks have been the victim and not had due process a lot of times. And a lot of times, I remember my own lifetime. I was born in 1953. It was just until the late 60s or 70s that it was a crime for a black person to be killed. That is correct. I'm going to repeat that. In my lifetime, the value of a black life was so devalued that black on black crimes was not prosecuted and you were not locked up for it. So it just was in the 70s moving forward that if you killed a black person, black or white, that you were held accountable for taking the life of a black person. I'm your host, Dr. Kenneth Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect enough to give you facts. So I don't want to make light of the situation, but we want to be in prayer. We want to have tolerance and empathy and sympathy, and we want to reach out to the victims and their family. It's always terrible when there's a loss of life by way of random violence or they're a victim of it. Now, another issue they would like to talk about in our community is why do we have all these guns? Some folks say they're against gun laws. I am a gun owner. I am for responsible gun ownership. But in a lot of communities, when you have a lot of gun violence and people become fearful and feeling unsafe, they tend to increase purchasing guns. I mean, everybody wants to feel safe. If I hear noise outside of my house late at night, I tend to get my gun and go investigate that. So there's a lot to talk about. It's a complex issue. There's a lot of factors involved. I would like to tell you that the guys, men and women, who make decisions to do crime and to carry guns and to take the life of other folks, those are choices. And those folks are criminals. Can we stop folks from making those type of choices? Probably not. But for young folks, I think one of the major concerns is it's always terrible in the community when adolescents and young folks, 14, 15, 16, when they are killing somebody and they're being taken off the street and they're going to prison for life and their parents is serving time with them. It's a terrible thing. And then there's a victim whose life has been taken and we have to bury that person. And so it is pain and suffering all around, but we don't want to lose sight of the fact that when we talk about gun violence and we talk about violence in the black community, you're basically talking about black males and young black males. And there are some interventions and there's some things that we can do as we identify in our community. We must be intolerant to criminal behavior. I'm talking about selling drugs and stealing and carjacking, that type of thing. So as a community, when we are witness to those things, we must report that to law enforcement. If you have a neighbor and they have somebody selling drugs, you might make a decision to mind your own business, but in that situation, that criminal activity is going to continue. And whenever there's gambling and there's drugs, there's going to be handguns and there's going to be violence and that type of thing. So hopefully you can go to C.C. Woodson this morning at 10 o'clock. There's a community meeting there, and you can have your input, you can have your ideas. A lot of folks think that law enforcement can stop crime in your community. Law enforcement can respond to violence. It's a big task to prevent violence from adults who make a decision to be criminals. And so we want what's best for our community. We want what's best for our town. So if you have an opinion about this, make sure you go to the community meeting and understand that it's very complex. When you talk about violence, you have to talk about the history of America, talk about what young folks see on TV. You have to talk about what young males, what they perceive as what's masculine. We have to talk about decision making. We have to talk about abuse. We have to talk about the family structure, lack of jobs, affordable housing. We have to talk about public education and what we're doing to empower children and what kind of culture we have to empower them to feel good about themselves, to be able to solve conflict, to be able to communicate, and to be good citizens. And then you have to talk about the faith-based community, the communities the churches and faith leaders. They are part of the community. I don't think one entity unto itself will be the solution. I think it's going to take teamwork and collaboration among the family, the community, the churches, law enforcement, organizations, social organizations, everybody, and particularly folks that live in the community where there's violence. We have to take charge and take ownership of our community and do whatever needs to be done to eliminate criminals from our community. But we don't want our children to be intimidated, to be in fear, that they feel that they have to do the same thing the criminals do to survive. We want a safe community. We want to call the police. We want to support the police. We want to get those criminals out of our community. So I just want to give you that perspective. Could be right, could be wrong. I don't know. And then the other issue that I want to talk about in conclusion is voter suppression and voter integrity. Now, anytime you talk about a voter issue in the black community, our history reminds us that we were denied the opportunity to vote for hundreds of years. So we are sensitive when folks say something about voter suppression, about voter integrity. Most of us watch the news enough and we talk to people enough, and we realize that it's a fact that voting in America is probably the best voting system we have in the world, and there has not been any really cheating of any magnitude. And so we believe that. And so some folks think otherwise, and they say that we're cheating and we need to have voter integrity. But I'm of the mindset, no matter whether somebody's talking about voter integrity or voter suppression, I believe as a minority, as a person of color, as a black person who has experienced oppression and the denial to vote in this country, that we should be about the business continuing to have strategies and plans to get folks registered to vote. Whatever laws are changed, we want to have knowledge of it so we can comply with it and get around it and get people to the polls and let folks know that your vote still matter and that it might be a barrier, but we're going to do what we have to do to get that vote cast. We live in a democracy. And when the masses and when poor people and working people and middle class people, when we have a society and we feel like our vote does not count or it doesn't matter, that's the foundation of a democracy. Your vote is your voice. So we encourage you to engage yourself, get yourself registered to vote. Make sure you take responsibility for your status as a registered voter. Go down to the election commission, ask questions, make sure if you change your address, that you go down there and change your address. Make sure that you're ready to vote. Okay, so this morning we want to bring attention to three things, the three V's. Want you to understand about voting and to get busy and to make sure that you have an opportunity to vote. We're talking about violence. Violence, we want to minimize it. Black on black violence, we want that to stop. White on white violence, we want that to stop. We do know in all over this country and all over America that poor black community they're always over police. And so we have an obligation, those of us who are law-abiding, and we believe and we support the police. We're not naive. We know that every police officer does not have the same attitude or professionalism when it comes to police in minority communities, because there's so much negative stereotypes on TV, social media, even in our textbooks in public school. And so we have a fight in front of us, but we are proud Americans. We are God-fearing people. And also those of us who are not God-fearing people, we still citizens. We believe that all of us have a right to have a voice and in our destiny. And in conclusion, we talked about the vaccine. So remember the three V's. Get registered to vote, take the vaccine, and let's say no to violence. And also we want to give a particularly good shout out to Mr. Ed Waddell. He worked so hard. Let's give him some flowers while he's alive. I also want to share with you that I am, as a talk show host, I have another radio show on a Monday night on WAAW Shout 94.7 FM. It's streaming live. You can download the app. It's www.shout94.7. I am the recipient of an honorary doctorate of ministry degree from a seminary, FMI Biblical Seminary and Studies. A couple of weeks ago, they blessed me with that. And what an honorary degree basically means is somebody recognized my body of work for the last 30, 40 years. And they said, congratulations, thank you for your service. Thank you for your commitment to justice and peace in America. And it gave me an honorary doctorate of ministry degree. Don't get that confused with an earned degree. I did not take any academic courses. I was just blessed and rewarded for the work that I've done since around 1960 to 2021. And so I am now Dr. Kenneth Myers Sr., the talk show host of The Voice of the People. You can listen to me every Saturday morning on WASC, where I co-host with the greatest radio man in upstate, Mr. Edward L. And every Monday night at 7 p.m., you can catch me on WAAW Shout 94.7 FM. That's in the Aiken, Augusta market, and it's the #1 gospel station on the Southeast. I love you enough to tell you the truth, and I respect you enough to give you the facts. I continue to believe that God has given us the power, and God has given us the knowledge to achieve what we're working for and what we're praying for. It matters not the situation, voter suppression, voting integrity, violence, or the virus. It matters not the opposition, evil folks, unethical folks, and criminals. We're going to experience victory because God is on our side, and we're going to prevail. But we believe that you can pray until you faint. God is not going to drop anything in your lap. You must participate in your blessing, and your blessings are horizontal and vertical. The vertical, you have to have eternal life in the spirit. Horizontal, you must get busy and plant the seed, till the soil, wait on the harvest, and then the action is we have to do the labor to reap the harvest. So I'm your host, Dr. Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect you enough to give you the facts. Always give a shout out to WASC 1530. This is a radio station that allows the voice of the people to be present, to be engaged, and to be with you every Saturday morning. And so if you don't do nothing else, you pray for me, and I pray for you. And remember, God is on our side.